Hello, everyone. My name is William Bailey. I'm the director of the Law Center's 150th anniversary celebration, and I want to welcome you all today and thank you for joining us for this program on public servants in the 21st century, featuring an all-star lineup of Georgetown Law alumni. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce our dean, William M. Traynor. As you may know, Dean Traynor is in his 11th year of his tenure leading the Law Center. He also serves as executive vice president of the university and holds the Paul Regis Dean Leadership Chair. And we're very grateful that he's here today to help introduce our program and our moderator. Dean Traynor, welcome.
Well, thanks very much, William, and thank you for all the work that you did in putting together today's program. This is really, it's such an exciting time. This is our 150th anniversary at Georgetown Law. And, we started in 1870, and, we spent a lot of time thinking about, what we would be doing during our 150th anniversary year. And so we did kind of intensive programming, and actually turned out not what we'd anticipated. So, as you can see, we were supposed to have a year of events around the world, and didn't happen that way because of the pandemic. So I'm actually broadcasting from my son Liam's room. Liam is a recent Georgetown College graduate. He's in New York right now, but I've got his room, and I have the Georgetown Law 150th banner. Really one of the few that exist. So that's partly how I'm able to remember this year, but another way is through the amazing programs that we've had. So we haven't had physical presence programs, but we've had virtual programs, and they've really been remarkable. And if you go to our website, you can see the ones that still lie ahead. But this is one that I'm particularly eager about. Today's program is about, as you heard from William Bailey, public servants in the 21st century. And we have just a superstar panel. I'm really just so delighted. We've got Mark Morial, Kathy Rumler, Josh Shapiro, Francis Rooney, examples of people from Georgetown Law who made enormous differences in the world. So our moderator, Professor Vic Nurse, is going to be doing kind of more detailed introductions. But I just wanted to thank our fabulous all-star panelists today for being part of this. So I'm going to turn matters over to Professor Nurse. Professor Nurse is somebody who really combines, in a way that is so unique, a remarkable career in public service with a remarkable career in academia. So she's one of the nation's foremost experts in Congress and statutory interpretation. She has had, many important jobs in government, including as chief counsel to then Vice President Joseph Biden. And she heads our Center for Congressional Studies. So we're so delighted that she's at Georgetown, so delighted that she's moderating today. So actually, before we turn matters over to our panelists, what made you interested in public service, Professor Nurse, and how has that shaped your career? So let me turn matters over to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Bill. This is it's an unusual time, but I think we're trying to make the most of it because it's such an extraordinary gift to have such distinguished alumni. And I'm really delighted to have the guests we have here today who far outshine what I've done in public service, but hopefully they all share the same vision that giving back to the world is, there's no better feeling. And even while we may disagree about how to do that, there are lots of different ways in which Georgetown alumni have served the public. I think it's part of the Jesuit tradition, but it's also something that is unique. I've taught at 5 different law schools. I know some people can't keep a job. I know. I have chairs at 3. And I visited it 2, and I have to say that I've never been at such a wonderful place that allows me to do my career, write books, argue tough cases, and also occasionally wander down to the White House and do something for my country. So with that, I'm going to introduce our extraordinary panel, and then they can show themselves. They're hiding. We have Mark Morial here. He is the president and CEO of the National Urban League, the nation's largest urban advocacy and civil rights organization. He served as mayor of New Orleans and the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, among many other things. And he's been recognized as one of the 100 most influential Black Americans by Ebony. Welcome, Mark. He has a short time frame. I think you're about 30 minutes. So, you know, it is Washington. We've all got things to do. So
Yeah.
you may go to him first.
Thank
We have Kathy Rummler. She is Executive Vice President, Chief Legal Officer, and General Counsel at Goldman Sachs. She served as counsel to President Barack Obama and was his longest serving White House counsel. It's a tough job. I've been there. She also served in the Department of Justice, was on the Enron task force. She's been an assistant United States attorney and worked as associate counsel to Bill Clinton. So I'm really delighted to see Kathy here today, and we'll get into it about what it looks like over there in the West Wing. Okay. Francis Rooney, Ambassador. It's a delight to have you here today. Ambassador Rooney served in the United States House of Representatives, representing Florida's 19th Congressional District. I was born in Florida. Thank you for serving my mother's state, Ambassador. He then went on from 2000, and before that, he was a United States Ambassador to the Holy See, having been appointed by George W. Bush. This is why we call him Ambassador. He is a double Hoya graduate of Georgetown College and the Law Center. So it's nice to see you, Ambassador. And then we have General Shapiro. Josh Shapiro is here with us today. He is the Attorney General of Pennsylvania. And he's worked on a number of issues there. He has lots of top priorities. And he too has a short time frame here. He served as the state representative for Pennsylvania's 153rd House District. And I'm going to call him General because when I worked on the Senate Judiciary Committee, we always called attorney generals by general and ambassadors as ambassador. Okay,
That's
so
very
I'm delighted.
kind.
Okay, well, I'm delighted to have you all here today. I'm going to start with Mark just because he has a 30-minute time frame. Will that work for you, General Shapiro?
Of course. I want to hear from Mark too. So.
Hey, how you doing,
Okay.
General?
All right. And I'm hoping we can have a bit of a conversation, Mark, because, you know,
Mhm.
there is something called Zoom fatigue I hear from my students.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'll try to make it, you know, down home for all of us. I'm a Hoya parent, but didn't graduate from Georgetown, but I consider it my home. So, Mark, tell me about public service and why you wanted to go into it, why it was important to you.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here with all of the distinguished Georgetown grads. And thank you to Dean Traynor, and thank you to you, and certainly to all of the students who are listening. I was inspired by my parents. My father was a lawyer, an elected official. My mother was a teacher and a civic activist. And they were frontline warriors in the civil rights movement. And then later, my father began his political career. And I watched the work they did, and I watched the purpose with which guided and really animated their lives. I think when I got to college and law school, I began to ask myself, can you make a living doing public service? And when I left Georgetown Law School, I had some loans. I was kind of broke and took the best paying job, which was a law firm job, and ended up with a major law firm. I don't regret doing it for 2 years, but realized that while the work was intellectually stimulating, it wasn't stimulating to my soul, my heart. And what I wanted to do was find a balance. I wanted to make a good living, but I also wanted to be able to do public service work, pro bono work, and that sort of thing. And so I started my own practice, and that's what guided my practice. But the foundation of public service is really about making a difference for others, to make a difference beyond yourself. And however you choose to do that, whether you choose, and I am lucky that I have a great day job that allows me to do it full time. But if you don't do public service full time, you can do public service in a variety of other ways. And I think members of the bar, because the bar has a special responsibility to the aims of justice, have I think a responsibility to be involved in the work of public service of community engagement in a very, very special way. Our profession is different. It's a profession mentioned by and mentioned in and protected by the Constitution. And it's a time-honored tradition in a nation that is a nation of laws and not of people, that lawyers have a role and a responsibility. And I've always believed that in Georgetown, helped bring that out, because you saw so many professors and so many students and so many graduates intersect with public service in multiple ways. And it helped to create, I think, a vision for me that I could find a way to make a living, pay back some loans, but also to live a life of purpose.
Well, thank you so much for talking about how you've melded your careers over the years, because often many of us do that. We aren't full-time public servants. We go in, we go out, we do a lot of pro bono work, and why that's important for lawyers. But let me ask you this quickly. Do you have any advice for those just starting out? Should they all go to firms first? Do you think diving into public service is good, or?
So I believe that, and this is a bias of mine, that spending time doing real lawyering, whether it's in a firm, whether it's in a public defender's office, whether it's as a prosecutor, whether it is wherever it may be, is a good foundation for other elements of public service, public policy, elected office. I spent 10 years with a very active, exciting, demanding law practice. And I always felt that in public service and in politics, it gave me a substantial competitive advantage in understanding, in knowing, in feeling, in sensing, in having experiences that I would not trade for anything else. So it's a choice. I mean, I just hired 2 Georgetown lawyers at the National Urban League. One is our general counsel, who's had a traditional career as a corporate lawyer, as a law firm lawyer, as a higher ed lawyer. Very excited. She just joined us 2 weeks ago. And I hired another more recent graduate whose work has mainly been in the Capitol Hill public policy arena. And so I think if you determine that that's what you want to do, it's okay to go straight into that work. But I think there's just nothing like having a part of your career, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, as a hands-on lawyer, whether it's transactional, whether it's litigation, whether it's advisory. I just think we graduate from law school with our training incomplete. We're not like doctors where we have internships and residencies, although Georgetown's, if you will, clinical program is excellent. It drew me to Georgetown. So I think you're incomplete when you finish law school. You're prepared, you're ready, you understand how to think, but the harder skills of specificity are on the practice of law and out there, which is why I think it is, but there's no one way, there's no right way, there's no single way. Mm-hmm. Everyone's got to choose their own, if you will, standing, their own level on how they want to use their education.
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to move to General Shapiro, because I know he's on a short time fuse too, and ask him if he could just follow up from his experience about how, why public service, and if Georgetown influenced him in any way on that path.
Well, Georgetown certainly influenced me, but before I got to Georgetown, much like Mark, I was really influenced by my folks and my faith. For me, I had a mom who was a school teacher, public school teacher in Philadelphia. And my dad was a local pediatrician. In fact, I remember the first time I ran for state rep and knocked on 18,000 doors. Very few people wanted to hear about my thoughts on education policy. They all wanted to tell me stories about how their kids had gone to my dad when,
wow.
When they were growing up. But I was really influenced by their work, by their engagement in the community, by their work in civil rights, by their work just as engaged members of our neighborhoods. And unfortunately for me, or I'd say looking back on it now, fortunately, I couldn't do calculus or organic chemistry. So the idea of being a doctor like my dad and helping folks that way was certainly not going to be possible. And I just felt that based on the folks that I was able to look up to, my folks, and my faith, which has taught me so much. You referenced the Jesuit way of Georgetown. I think that is true of many different faiths. And as an American Jew, one of the things that I always reflect upon is this teaching from Scripture that no one is required to complete the task, but neither are we free to refrain from it. And many people can interpret that in different ways. But to me, it just basically means we all have a responsibility to get off the sidelines, to get in the game, and to do our part. And so for me, based on what I was interested in studying, the ways in which my folks taught me those valuable lessons, I thought public service and elected office politics was the best way for me to help my community. I was at a pivotal moment in the late 90s, early 2000s, working on Capitol Hill. I was a chief of staff to a congressman and thought, you know what, this is a great opportunity I'm having as a young man, 24 years old at the time. But for me to be able to take my public service to the next level, I wanted to have a law degree. And I felt that the best place I could get a law degree was at Georgetown. And I was just really thrilled to be able to earn a slot in the night program, be able to work on the Hill during the day and study law at night, because I recognized that when we look back at the progress in our nation, when we look back at the progress for me in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, there are people who oftentimes were lawyers who were the ones driving the change, who were the ones bringing about the progress in our communities. And so for me, the education at Georgetown was invaluable, both in terms of what I learned in the books and the ways in which my professors and the deans and others at the time really stressed that as a lawyer, the way you can have a real impact on the community is by getting outside of the books and outside of the classroom and really doing your part to actively engage in public service. And so to be able to get a top-notch law degree and to be encouraged to do the work of public service is just something so invaluable and unique. And I reflect upon my teachings at Georgetown, the professors I had, and the classmates that I learned with, who are now doing great things in their field, oftentimes. So I haven't quite figured out what Mark has, how to earn a living and do public service at the same time. I've been on the public service side for the last 20 years, but I hopefully one day will be able to experience that as well. But make no mistake, family, faith, and Georgetown have been key pillars for me in my public service.
Well, it's great to hear. Do you have any tips, as I asked, for young students who, they're just launching a career like yours? I'm often asked because I, worked up on this as a lawyer through the Senate. Do you have any personal tips?
I do. I try and mentor young folks mainly because I was given an opportunity by then Senator Carl Levin to do an internship in his office back in 1994. No one knew me on the Hill. I didn't come from a political family, and they gave me a shot. And I can remember how I felt when the chief of staff and the legislative director talked to me as, a 21-year-old kid or something. Mm-hmm. And so I spent a lot of time trying to mentor young folks. We have a robust honors program in the Office of Attorney General. I've hired interns and young staff throughout my career. And the advice I give them all is the same. Do not follow conventional wisdom, because it's never all that wise. Don't take one job because you think it's going to lead to another. Don't study one particular subject because you feel like it's going to get you a job or a fellowship in another. If you're passionate about your studies, if you're passionate about your work, you're going to do a darn good job, and you're going to attract employers, and you're going to attract leaders and academics, and you're going to be successful in your career. Figure out what's burning inside of you, follow your passion, study it, work it, and absorb as much as you can. To learn from a Congressman Rooney or Kathy Rumler, who's done incredible work with Barack Obama. I know her by reputation, and to be able to have exposure to folks like that, to find yourself able to get in the rooms with people like that, that combined with your own charting of your own path and course is going to make you successful. So bottom line, don't follow the conventional wisdom, follow what's burning inside you.
Okay. Well, let's go to Ambassador Rooney, because I don't want to leave Ms. Rumler out, but we might have a little special conversation about the West Wing. And I'm, a student of Congress, so it's really nice to have you here, Ambassador and Representative. Um, so can you tell us what you think about all that advice? I mean, what would you tell young students about why you went into public service and what is the value of that for their careers?
Well, first of all, both Josh and Mark have made some very important comments about the value of service that I would certainly agree with. Just like it's a good idea to practice law and get your foundation, Mark, I would say the same about business. If you're going to go into business, it's good to go into business before you do public service if it can work out that way. Then you have a real platform of understanding. You, having worked on the Hill, probably know that a lot of congressmen don't have a lot of practical experience. That was certainly one of the frustrating things about my congressional service, as opposed to diplomatic service, where I was always surrounded by experts, subject matter experts. That's a big thing. We've always felt that giving back is an important principle, as both Josh and Mark said. I'm a Catholic, and we have a strong tradition of service to others, social justice, and things like that. And I think that Georgetown played a big role in that. I went to Georgetown Prep as well as Georgetown and Georgetown Law. So whatever's wrong with me, Jesuits are responsible for it. One thing they do well is they inculcate a great spirit of public service and giving back. That old thing that to whom much is given, much is expected, resonates throughout the Jesuit teaching. And I've always felt that in our companies. We've always pushed our people to get out, be involved in the community, be involved in their church, be involved in the United Way, community-based organizations, feed the poor at health kitchens and stuff like that. And that's been a big thing for our company culture. And I think that's one of the things that makes me proud of our companies, that we've been able to accomplish that.
That's great. Do you have any particular advice? I guess you said, well, if you can go into business first.
Well, I would say be flexible. As Josh alluded to, things are going to come your way. Opportunities and challenges will come your way that you could hardly ever expect. I've certainly had a lot of things come at me that I never would have thought in 1978 when I left Georgetown Law that I would be doing or facing. And so when you're flexible and you have a firm grounding, it makes it easier to take on those challenges and to capitalize on the opportunities.
Okay, well, we're going to go to Ms. Rumler right now, but I hope we can come back for one more round from everybody. And we do have some student questions, but I agree with that flexibility. They used to joke that I had too many jobs, but I actually think they've given me extraordinary experience that I can give to my students. And, it seems scary at their point of view from, the pandemic, et cetera, but flexibility is very important. Thank you, Ambassador. Okay, well, she told me to say Kathy. We never actually met before today because we were not in the White House at the same time, but it's delightful. We know a lot of the same people. It's delightful to see you here, Kathy. And I wonder if you can add to this conversation. I mean, what was it that made you go into public service? You could have made a lot more money, obviously you're in business now, but you could have done that before. You're a very highly talented lawyer. So what was it about that? And did Georgetown have anything to do with that?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I was always attracted to sort of the human stories in law, ironically, and less about, kind of financial transactions. And here I am working at Goldman Sachs, so go figure. Georgetown was pivotal for me because I had the opportunity that I would not have had anywhere else at any other school, really in the country, but to be an intern at the Justice Department when I was at Georgetown. So I actually interned in the criminal division of the Justice Department, during the school year. And it was an amazing experience and definitely, told me that I wanted to work with people, directly, ultimately as a prosecutor, which I went to go do. And then I went back to the Justice Department when President Obama was elected as, more senior leader there, and then moved over to the White House from there. So I think had I not gone to Georgetown, I sort of spent my professional career sort of working very much in a Washington-based practice between the Justice Department and the White House. And, Georgetown gave me entree to do that.
That's terrific. Well, you know, General Shapiro has to go down to the White House. It's a very Washington crowd here. So he'd like to say a few words before he signs off.
I want to just stress to everybody watching, to the students out there, you know, to take advantage of every opportunity you have at Georgetown, to recognize that, you know, there are opportunities to manufacture good fortune in your life through hard work, through following that thing that's burning inside of you, and to make sure that you're opening up your mind to different opportunities. That Jesuit tradition that Professor you spoke about, the Congressman Ambassador spoke about, I think that's very real. And I think in this moment in time that we find ourselves in this country, it's going to take a lot of lawyers and a lot of people who care about public service to help us bring ourselves back to, you know, some sensibilities, to help bring us back to a place where we can agree on just a basic set of facts, so that we can begin to then have spirited arguments and debates about how we solve some of the problems that are pressing in our communities. And I think lawyers, particularly Georgetown educated lawyers, are in a unique position to help us move through that. Make no mistake, there are many challenges, and, you know, we're going to need everybody's big brains to work on those big challenges, especially Georgetown law students and graduates. So I'm honored to be here with everyone. I'm sorry that I have to jump so quickly, but I do wish everyone the best, and I hope to see you real soon.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, maybe Mark also has something else going on. So
Yeah.
let's go back to you. Can I ask you just one quick question? You know, this is a
Mhm.
dark time. I'm going to ask the other panelists the same question. It's been a dark time. Do you see any silver linings? You know, the General Shapiro mentioned this. You know, we need everybody right now.
I see, you know, I'll tell you, a silver lining I've seen of recent is the way in which business executives have stood up on issues of democracy. I think that there are new coalitions emerging in the country. There's a hope for a different future. You know, whenever there are clouds, there's always a ray of sunshine somewhere, and you got to find that ray of sunshine. And I sense that this nation, because of its resilience, we've been through this pandemic-laden health, the economy, racial justice, happening all at the same time, roiling the nation, creating the necessity for us to do something we never would have imagined, that we all would almost have to partially shut down the economy, work from home, make broad adjustments. But I am optimistic. I am faithful, and General Shapiro and the ambassador made the point. Lawyers have a unique role in leadership. You know, lawyers are taught to understand issues, to understand how from friction you can make progress. Lawyers sometimes understand, because essential to lawyering is negotiating, how to seek common ground. Lawyers also understand the difference between sometimes principle and opinion. I can stand on my principles, but we can share different opinions. So I just hope that this new generation of lawyers will recognize that every generation's got to meet the moment. And it means meet the challenges of now. And the challenges of now are somewhat the same, but in many respects very different. Globalization, technological enhancement, demographic change, differences in how we view human beings and families. These trends, lawyers will define how we come out of this pandemic. And I'm optimistic. While I do believe that the challenges are daunting, I think the momentum, the arc bends, as Dr. King said, the moral arc bends towards justice. And I think that's so true.
Yeah. Oh, it's so nice to hear you say that.
Thank you.
My favorite quotes. And, you know, law is the means, justice is the ends. That's our motto here at Georgetown. Thank
So
you
thank
so much for
everybody.
having us.
Go Hoyas. Go Hoyas. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Well, now we get to have a much more intimate conversation. What do you think, Ambassador, about the challenges that are posed today? I mean, this has been a time that, I'm not, I don't consider myself young. My parents lived through World War II. I never thought I'd see anything like this. Is there
I
a
don't think
hope?
anybody thought they'd see anything like this.
Yeah.
It certainly has some pluses as well as challenges to it. The evidence about how happy and productive people working from home are, at least in the business world, is very compelling. And I think we'll continue to see a couple of days a week at least, a lot of people work from home. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten on an airplane, flown halfway around the world, have one meeting and dinner and fly back. I think those days are probably gone.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is job satisfaction figures are up all over the world. People are happier despite the COVID. I think that's a very good thing. And I think that defies the doomsayers who are talking about AI and technology taking away everybody's jobs. I feel a little more optimistic about people that want to work right now. And then certainly technology's made this rapid advance. I mean, there are people that have gotten used to the internet that never had used the internet before. And I'm not a huge fan of delivered food. We have not had great success with that in Washington, D.C. But I do think the use of Zoom and things like that have been very great technological breakthroughs.
Well, I agree with you on that. What do you think, Kathy? What do you think about the new technology? I mean, you're working at a very high-powered legal job. Is there good news for the students?
Well, I mean, I have to say, I really miss the interaction with my colleagues, so, and I think that we do lose a lot when we're communicating exclusively over Zoom, because, you lose an ability to really pick up people's body language and their eye contact. I never know exactly where to look. I'm sure I'm not looking in the right place. And so, I think it definitely, I agree with the ambassador that I think it's here to stay, and it will be a mechanism by which we work more efficiently, I think, particularly with respect to travel. But I'm personally a big fan of a real meeting where people, can sit across the table and collaborate and think creatively about, problems that they're trying to solve and that kind of thing. So I, for one, am very eager to resume some sense of normalcy and have, many more people, back in the office.
Mm-hmm.
So
I might make a comment about that, Kathy.
Yeah.
I think you made an excellent point. In business and probably in large law firms, I don't have that experience. We have a concept of cultural capital. You've got to get people together often enough to share stories and to exchange ideas, that you have this common bond that creates your corporate capital. And so when you have turnover, or you go too long without reinforcing, whether it's the water cooler discussions or company events or whatever, you got to have that. Has the glue that holds the company together.
Yeah. And so much of what we do, in lawyering is through apprenticeship learning, really, and having the opportunity to sit and watch and listen to someone have a phone conversation with the prosecutor, or have a conversation with a defense attorney, or have a conversation with a member of Congress, and being able to really absorb from more experienced practitioners, kind of how they operate. I mean, lawyers are communicators. It's a communication skill, and it's a relationship profession. And so that's how things get done. And I don't care what area of law you are in, the relationships are really critical and matter. And it's much harder to develop those virtually.
Right. I mean, I think the cultural capital is right. I experienced this we make difficult decisions about who to hire. It's the greatest job in the world to teach law, right? And it's harder to do via Zoom. It's really harder, I think, in some ways, because you don't have the trust factor, the cultural capital. Could I have like a short conversation down the hall and we could get this done easily instead of writing a 5-page memo?
Yeah.
I still remember those hair-raising events at Georgetown Law where you'd have to stand up in front of 150 people on your feet and try to explain something. You
Yeah,
can't
well,
replicate that experience.
Yeah,
Right.
you've been in the Congress, I mean, we have over 100 faculty members. We have had them all on faculty meetings, which is fascinating. Zoom actually makes them behave better,
Oh, yeah,
believe it or not.
I could see that.
But anyway, of all the faculties I've ever been on, we work together so well. We have to because we're so big, which is why I stayed here. I was on my way to go visit at Columbia, and Bill Traynor convinced me my work was here. So I'm delighted. But let's get back to you all. We have a couple questions, more than a couple, from our viewers apparently. And so I want to get to one of them. Hank Fellows, who's Law 78, says, this is a big one for both of you because you've both worked at very high positions in politics. How can our elected leaders move our country back to bipartisanship?
I love that question. Can I answer it?
Yep.
I'm sure Kathy will have a great answer as well. I always say I've been trying to speak about this a lot because the most dreadful part of the last 4 or 5 years has been the partisanship, the abject, self-centered partisanship. And so I've kind of come to the conclusion that we desperately need term limits. It never was supposed to be a career. The founders would not envision the political class that we have now. And I've seen so many decisions made strictly on the basis of how do they keep their job, that it's very depressing. The other thing, if I could wave a wand, I would get rid of all the highly partisan districts. As late as Bill Clinton's second term, less than 26% of congressional districts were highly partisan. Now it's like 80. So really, it's all about the primary, which is not what it's supposed to be. And you don't have any really conflict of ideas. You just have a rush to the left or a rush to the right. And then the third thing I would do is I would reinstate the fairness doctrine, which I think was maybe Ronald Reagan's biggest mistake, listening to Roger Ailes and taking that out.
May I quote you?
Sure. Hey, I sit that on TV all the time. Most of these TV guys don't know what the fairness doctrine is.
I know, but and I think Donna Brazil once said this, and my students don't know what it is either, but I didn't grow up in this kind of world where, we had different television newscasters for your political parties, but
we're a long way from Walter Cronkite and Roger Mudd, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, what happened to that? Kathy, you're too young for us.
Well, no, that's for sure.
What do you think? Do you have any magic wands here? I think, those are all excellent suggestions.
I think I completely agree with everything the ambassador said. I think that, again, getting back to relationships, I think that the only way that these relationships can really, get formed on a bipartisan basis is really working on an individual issue, right? Like that's how people or a particular, a particular matter, whether it's a hearing or whatever, and that, can help. But the problem, getting back to sort of the root cause issues, which is highly partisan districts, the fact that we don't have term limits, the fact that in today's day and age, every member is always in cycle all the time. They're always, thinking about it. So even if, and most of them, I think, behind closed doors and in their heart of hearts, and that they're being, honest, they really do want to work in a bipartisan way, but they believe that the politics will not permit them to do so. And that's a really, sad state of affairs when, a senior Republican member of Congress can't go sit down in the Oval Office with a Democratic president because it will harm him or her, politically to do so. That's a really tough state of affairs and makes it pretty impossible to govern.
Yeah.
The only one other thing I would add that I forgot is campaign finance reform.
Yeah.
George Bush, I was on his finance council both elections. In 2004, our budget was $164 million. I think there was 3 times that much just in the Georgia runoff. And it's
that
just
is wild. I don't do campaigns, I'm a legal eagle, but that's amazing.
The amount of time spent raising money and the fear that lobbyists can engender in a congressperson is incredible. Not me. I used to throw them out of my office, but I don't really care about them.
Yeah, well, I used to work for someone like that too. He used to loan me to Orrin Hatch when I was working in the Senate. It was interesting. No, that's how we got deals done. I
Yeah.
spent more time with my Republican counterparts than I did with Ted Kennedy's staff when I worked for.
Well, I interned for Henry Bellman from Oklahoma, where I'm from, and his best friend was Hubert Humphrey, and they couldn't agree on whether the sun came up, but they were really good friends. And he was a really great guy.
Yeah, and oftentimes those things can allow you to get personal things done, things behind closed doors, and then you go out and give your speech, and it's a little bit different. But hopefully the next generation is going to tackle some of these problems. And I tell students this is a great time to be a lawyer.
Take the ridiculous tax cut. The Democrats were willing to go to 25%. Ryan wouldn't budge. If we'd have gone to 25%, we would have had a bipartisan corporate tax cut that put us on competition with the rest of the world.
Right. So yeah, I think there's hope, but it is a difficult thing for our students. Let me ask you another question from Heidi McIntosh, Law 86. She says, with law school costs increasingly sky high, it must be very difficult for students to bear their student loan debt. And what's your advice to students and to policymakers about how to surmount that barrier? Kathy, do you have any wisdom?
Well, I think it's a really huge problem, particularly as we started this conversation about public service and the importance of doing it. And it's frankly it's just not practical for a lot of students with that kind of debt. So and their options, I think, shouldn't be limited in that regard. So certainly, I think with respect to policymakers, I think that there should be some form of student debt relief for people who choose to go into public service, right? So that we can level the playing field in terms of folks having that optionality. So but it's a complicated, it's expensive. Legal educations are expensive. It's expensive to run Georgetown Law School, I'm sure Dean Traynor would say. And I don't even know what the tuition is up to these days, but it was expensive even when, back when I was there.
Yeah, it's all schools are, I actually went to a UC school. I'd gone to Stanford, and then my parents didn't want me to go to law school, so I earned my money as a waitress to go to UC Berkeley in the days where it cost very little.
Yeah.
But I might not have gone to law school. I didn't have a lot of family support. So we get it. I mean, we're working very hard on opportunity scholarships for people who, first generation, people are really putting in the work. But it's a big public policy program. Do you have any idea, Ambassador, if the corporate world could have any influence on this?
It's possible. I mean, certainly there are all kinds of corporate internship programs for underprivileged kids, like the Cristo Rey schools and things like that we participate in. On the question that Kathy was answering there, we did a little work on that in the education committee, and it's amazing how many government requirements there are that drive up the cost of education. And
Really?
Lamar Alexander chaired a bipartisan panel about that, and I read it. And I mean, it's whether it's reporting on how many times you did fire drills in every dorm each month or whatever. And they add a lot of that rapid rise in administrative costs that I think all of our colleges, universities, and law schools are overwhelmed with. Dean Traynor would be the best one to ask about it.
I'm sure, trust me, I'm sure there are a lot. My sister was a public school teacher, then a principal, and then a associate superintendent in a huge county out in Virginia. She used to call me up for legal advice all the time because the legal requirements, I mean, she's just an expert educator, but there were so many legal requirements involved in what she did that they had to have people on staff just to handle those things, which I thought was very odd.
We did a bipartisan overhaul of the Higher Ed Act a couple of years ago, but they couldn't get enough votes to bring it to the floor. But it would have straightened out a lot of the conflicting requirements for student aid, the Pell Grants and all the different things, and standardized some eligibility requirements, and made really life a lot simpler for people applying as students.
Well, yeah, and I think we need to get back to the work of legislating. I mean, not all legislation is necessarily expanding the scope of government. It can be organizing, or you have to revise your programs as you go.
Well, and that's an interesting irony too. The Republicans, of which I am one, sort of, always talk about the outrageous bureaucracy interpreting the laws, and the Chevron doctrine, et cetera.
Yeah,
Well,
sure.
the fact of the matter is, they write these crummy laws that are so vague and so broad because no one wants a spot on their back. So they ask for the bureaucracy to try to figure it out with another set of federal regulations.
Yeah, well, there's problems everywhere. If I could get them to write better laws, I would really, since my expertise is in statutory interpretation, and it's both sides of the aisle don't know. I mean, the court gets how they pass legislation wrong, and at the same time, they don't write laws that you can interpret. So if I could get them all in the same room, maybe.
Yeah, I've been told by old-time legislators that in the 20, 30 years ago, the way a bill was written was much more precise than they are now.
Well, I wouldn't let anybody else work on the things I worked on, but I'd already been at the Justice Department and argued cases. I was hired to be a kind of his pet nerd, I guess you'd say, at the time. I mean, everybody else was off doing politics. So I cared a lot about it, but I don't think that's normal. In any event, I have one more question from one of my star students. She has not one, but three clerkships. And she has asked, she wants to know, we still have a legal profession where at the tippity top, it's pretty white and it's pretty male. And she's given us a lot of stats, which, if you look at the federal judiciary, for example, it remains very racially not integrated. And also in terms of gender. And so her question is, what can we do to get people of color, more women at the tippity tops of our legal profession, in judgeships, in the White House, heads of corporations, where there still remains a really distinctive difference in the numbers? Kathy, you want to chat?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Well, you just have to focus on it, in a very laser-like way. I'm very proud to say that when I left the White House as President Obama's White House counsel, 50% of his judicial nominees were women. And, I think something like 14 federal districts across the country, we placed, the first either woman or person of color judge, in that district, which I was amazed that there were that many districts that had never had a woman or had never had a person of color. But, there were. And so, we really focused in on those places that there were only white male judges. And we said, okay, well, we're going to, we're going to put a woman, we're going to put a person of color, et cetera. So it didn't happen, naturally or organically. We had to very, very much focus on it. And then I think with respect to places outside of the judiciary, you really, have to identify diverse talent early in their careers, and, make sure that you focus on creating the right opportunities for promotion and development. And so, one of the statistics that I think really bothers a lot of people are the percentage of equity partnerships at law firms that are held by women. It's stubbornly low. I think it generally hovers around 15%, notwithstanding that, for 30 years or so, half of the graduates of law schools are women. And so, but for whatever reason, that seems to be a place that women have had a hard time, really sort of cracking. So, I think there's still an enormous amount of work to be done, and it takes a lot of focus from senior leaders of organizations. I had the benefit of President Obama being really focused on that and driving me very hard. But you can get it done. And one of the things that I found when we were doing judges was that there was just an absolute embarrassment of riches in terms of diverse talent. So it wasn't hard to find the talent at all. It just took, that focus. And all over the country, it wasn't hard to find it in Mississippi. It wasn't hard to find it in Iowa. it just was, you had to really make that a very serious priority.
Okay, what do you think, Ambassador?
Well, in industry, it varies by different industries.
Right.
I would say some industries are very diverse. Banking, particularly, is a good one.
Mhm.
A lot of women bankers in high positions at banks. Insurance, the same way. One of our businesses in our family of companies is the construction business, which is one of the more goober businesses left. But even there, we're finding that women make excellent project managers because they're so detailed oriented. And I've seen some people who are clearly of the old school totally embrace getting more women project managers, which I think is again an improvement in things for us. I know my daughter runs our real estate development business in Virginia. All the major companies have a lot of women in real estate development, and including one of the people from Forest City's daughter runs their office out in Tyson's. So
Yeah.
that's a very women-friendly industry.
Yeah. It is interesting that it's spotty, and the partnership is interesting too. You know, when I went to Paul Weiss, which was my firm in New York, there was one woman litigation partner. I'm sure if I went back now, it would be different, but the numbers are still remain stark. I know that we're working on judges as well. But people at Georgetown go into all fields. You know, Savannah Guthrie, who is on the Today Show, is a Georgetown law graduate. So,
Well, I might add, it's a tremendous foundation for a career in business as well. Nothing teaches you to think like a good legal education, and Georgetown's maybe
well,
one of the very best.
I have to quote you again. You know, I thought we'd be talking about the West Wing, but no. I'm sure students want to know, how do you get a job in the West Wing, Ms. Moore?
Luck. Really, I mean, it's a lot about luck. What I would say, in addition to luck, is, doing the job that you're doing very well. I think it was Attorney General Shapiro said, don't spend all your time trying to think about, okay, if I do this, it'll lead to this, it'll lead to this, it'll lead to this, because then people feel like you're not committed to the job you're doing. And I think if you're very committed to the job you're doing, then people will want to help you. And, I mean, every opportunity that I've had, including, being the general counsel of Goldman Sachs, is because, someone recommended me for it. Right? Or someone I had worked with before said, oh, you should meet Kathy. She would be great for this particular position. And so, relationship building, being, a colleague who people want to work with, I think is a very important, part of professional success.
Right. It is. Did luck play a role in your life? I mean, you have been a diplomat. My husband's a former diplomat. So I want to hear about how you got your job as one of the world's great diplomats. I mean, that is a great job.
Well, like I tried to say in that answer that question earlier, you're going to have opportunities and challenges that you can't expect. So you've got to be flexible and kind of weave through life and take what comes. And as Kathy said, do the best job you can at each position. I was fortunate that we had a fairly extensive international business. And so for about the past 35 years, going back to the Iranian Revolution, I've been involved in briefing with the State Department and different agencies on what I'd seen and learned around the world. And it's been a very enriching part of my career that I've enjoyed. And I think I've been able to help make a difference in some areas. And then it culminated with serving as the ambassador of the Holy See under George W. And that was a great opportunity to leverage the Catholic Church into some global goals that their unique stature allows them to be heard in a different way than like when the president says it. The Iranians say, for example, you just want to get your hands on our oil. Well, they can't really say that to the Pope. So when he would criticize Ahmadinejad and people like that, it had a little more resonance. And so our job was to give them the right message and help them phrase it correctly.
Wow, that's fascinating. What was Was there any time where you felt like, wow, I'm really making a difference here? Was it working as ambassador to the Holy See, or when you were a congressman?
Well, there were vignettes at all steps along the way, as I'm sure all the panelists would agree. As a congressman, the things that I feel best about was why I ran was to get the money to restore the Everglades. President Clinton signed the Everglades Restoration Plan in 2000, and they had very nominal amounts of money appropriated for 20 years. So I ran to try to see what I could do, knowing a few elected officials over the years, and we got 2.1 billion in 4 years. So now we have the money to build out the important projects to stop polluting Lake Okeechobee and the adjacent coastal waters.
Wow.
The other thing is back in 2006,
Florida family.
yeah, to 2006, Jeb and President Bush and Mel Martinez got the offshore drilling ban in the eastern Gulf of Mexico, east of a line that runs south of Destin. And it was about to expire this year. And we managed to get that extended for 10 more years. Well, actually, as a great Speaker Pelosi got it passed in the House for me, but the Senate obviously wasn't going to take it up. But we convinced Trump that he had a better chance of carrying Florida if he would extend it for 10 years. And now it's going to be a moot point because you really, by 10 years from now, there won't be any offshore drilling in the Gulf of Mexico.
Right. Well, again, thank you for my family who lives there. And the rest of the
We're in Florida.
We need it. Kathy, I want to ask you just a little, we have some students on here who have worked on the law journals and are saying, is that worth doing? I've really valued my time on my journal. I love our journal students. Is that something that you recommend?
Well, if I said no, I would really be in trouble since I was the editor-in-chief of the Georgetown Law Journal.
I kind of knew that, but
no, I thought it was an incredible experience. And the best thing about it, I mean, it was a ton of work. There's no question. But the best thing about it, though, was the relationships, again, that I formed with the group of people on the Law Journal and how we were running a little business, right? We had a budget. We were way behind production schedule. We had to catch up. We had to figure out, how to do that. And we chose the content together, for the journal, and and then had to negotiate with a very cranky academics, law professors who, had strong views about where their commas should be placed. And all of that, you developed good negotiating skills. And I just thought it was unbelievably good training. And I would absolutely encourage everybody to do it.
yeah.
It was one of my best experiences in law school, was working on the journal.
I have to say, me too. It really made me tough,
Yeah.
tough enough for my clerkship with one of the toughest judges in New York. So, and eventually, see, you can go from the Law Journal and then you can save the Everglades, really, and be ambassador to the Holy See, which has some of the most beautiful artworks in the world. Wow. Ambassador Rooney, do you have any final comments? I think we're at time. I really want to thank you for sharing some time with us.
Well, I'd just like to thank Dean Traynor and Bill and you and everybody that has organized this great panel and all the panelists. It's an honor to be with such distinguished and thoughtful individuals, and I hope it adds some value to the students. I was fortunate at Georgetown Law to meet many, many impressive people who would come speak at the school, given, as you said, its unique location. And it's an experience that helped me a lot. So I hope this is helpful to some of the students now.
Well, thank you very much. I'm sure they're really going to enjoy it. And frankly, they'll be able to watch it over and over again. So you're giving us twice the value. What about you, Kathy?
Well, I echo all of that. And the other, I guess, little piece of advice that I would say is, don't be afraid to take risks in your professional life. It's I think just a little bit of a footnote to being flexible. It's sort of part of the same concept, but I think that if I could give advice, that would be sort of top on the list. Okay, then. Well, I want to thank the Dean for asking me to do this. I
I'm delighted not to be teaching statutory interpretation, which I would otherwise be, and I got to meet a great global diplomat and a member of the House, and someone I should have run across while we were in the West Wing, but did not, and is a wonderful graduate of Georgetown. So thank you so much for being with us during this time, and hopefully we'll get to see you in person next year.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Bye-bye.